Good morning. Good morning. I have to say, it is absolutely wonderful to be sharing Bible stories with you in the month of August. I know some of you have a real love for Bible and some of you do not, and I'm hoping that during this month we'll find a way to come together to hear the wonderful messages, to live through the characters, and to do what is best done with the Bible, and that is to find ourselves and then to open to a great transformation so that we can be even more of what we are called to be, and that is the divine in expression. So we are in week 3 right now, and as we move into this week, I am mindful of what Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, says about the Bible. He tells us that the Bible is a wonderful story that reveals the experiences and the development of an awakening consciousness within human beings. And if you think about the Bible in this way, you'll see that that's true, that every character, every story has, if you look to its core, a message about consciousness, right? There is always a place where we find ourselves, whether it is in our most human way, in our most vulnerable, and sometimes in our most unaware kind of way. And at other times, we see our consciousness glorified, magnified by the presence of God. And all of these stories, all of these characters have prevailed over time because we find ourselves in them. And in finding ourselves with an open heart, with an open mind, we grow and we know God more, both within us and all around. So today I want to bring to you a story that you may or may not know. It is the story that I call David and Jonathan. How many of you know the story about the relationship between David and Jonathan? Okay, so 10 of you. That's good. That's a good place to start. We must start somewhere. And that is one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this story to you. It is found in the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, and it is written of in one of the books of the prophet Samuel. It is an amazing story of great love, about the power of love to change and transform us, to move us even higher into a great way of being in communion. But before I can tell you the story, I want to give you a little bit of context about both of these characters. And so we have to back up for a minute, and we recognize that before David and Jonathan meet, David comes to know King Saul, who is Jonathan's father. Now, if you remember the story of David and Goliath, right? Goliath being that Philistine giant that is huge. Well, King Saul is the first king of Israel, and he is at battle with the Philistines. Now, King Saul is a big guy, but Goliath is bigger. And so you can imagine how that would be a little intimidating. And so now we've come to this place where they're going to have it out. And King Saul has this moment of fear, and he says, I'm not going out there. Does anybody want to go? Not me. No way, Jose, right? So anyway, so David comes forward, and he's armed with the grace of God and faith in God, and he knows that God has called him, and he goes out onto this field and he shoots his slingshot and he hits it in just the right way that he slays Goliath, and the kingdom is saved. Well, the goodness of this is not lost on King Saul, and he recognizes that David is touched by God. There's something about him that is great. There's something about him that is bigger than life. It is indeed the very presence of God that is in him, and he recognizes this, So he says to David, please leave your home. He comes from the house of Jesse. He says, leave your home and join me in the palace. Well, when David comes to the palace, he brings his other many gifts. For not only is he a tremendous warrior, but he is also a harpist. And when he plays the harp, the Spirit of God fills the space. And whatever is in the mind, whatever strife, whatever upset, falls away with the strings of the harp as they are played. And everyone who hears David play feels the love, the beauty, the harmony of the very presence of God, and they feel it within their being. So David is now in the castle. He is a warrior. He's helping Saul fight battles, but he's also playing the harp. And it is here that David and Jonathan meet. Now when they meet, fireworks happen. There is a connection of the soul that is profound. It is deep. Have you ever had that with somebody when you met them? You just felt this instant bond, and you know in your being that you are one with them? Well, if you haven't had that, I hope that you do. I've had that a couple false times, but now I got it for real, so that's good. But I also have had it with friends, and I love that feeling, because when you are in that feeling, there's nothing that can divide you. There's nothing that can separate you. You just know that it is love and it is God. And this is the feeling that happens between David and Jonathan when they meet. It is an amazing thing. And together they share a profound love that both strengthens and nurtures them. It brings out the very best in both of them. David is made even stronger as a warrior and as a leader. It's like he's coming from a source that is even greater than that he came from before. And Jonathan moves into such tremendous, selfless love, far beyond that of one's human nature. And so together, as they are joined, love is magnified. Now, some scholars will debate and say that their love was platonic, and others will say that it was romantic as well. And I think it's because of the way that their story is written. It is lyrical, it is moving, it is tender, it is powerful. I think because it opens up this question. I think that is why that a lot of times this story is not told in more traditional religious circles, as you might guess. However, it is a story that is deep and pure and true, and it is one worth hearing, and hearing at depth, and that's why we share it today. And so I invite you today to listen to the story as I reveal it with you, and also listen to the words of Scripture. Our friend Don Queen will be sharing Scripture with you today. And as you listen, pay attention to your heart and notice what happens for you and what is the truth for you as you hear of the power of love between David and Jonathan.
For all those times you stood by me, for all the truth that you made me see, for all the joy you brought to my life, for all the wrongs that you made right, for every dream you made come true, for all the love inside of you, I'll be forever grateful, baby. You're the one who held me up, never let me fall. You're were my voice when I couldn't speak. You were my eyes when I couldn't see. You saw the best there was in me, lifted me up when I couldn't reach. You gave me faith 'cause you believed. I'm everything I am because you loved me. You gave me wings, you made me fly. You touched my hand and I touched the sky. I lost my faith, you gave it back to me. You said no star I couldn't reach. I stood by you and I stood tall. I had your love, I had it all. I'm grateful for each day you gave me. Maybe I don't know that much, but I know this much is true. I am blessed because I was loved by you. You were my strength when I was weak. You were my voice when I couldn't speak. You were my eyes when I couldn't see. You saw the best there was in me, lifted me up when I couldn't reach. You gave me faith 'cause you believed. I'm everything I am because you love me. You were always there for me, the tender wind that carried me, a light in the dark, shining your love into my life. You've been my inspiration. Through the lies you saw the truth. My world is better now because I was loved by you. You were my strength when I was weak. You were my voice when I couldn't speak. You were my eyes when I couldn't see. You saw the best there was in me, lifted me up when I couldn't reach. You gave me faith 'cause you believed. I'm everything I am because you love me. I'm everything I am because you love me.
Thank you, Donovan. Beautiful. Really beautiful. Oh, my goodness. This song speaks to the kind of love that David and Jonathan had with each other. You see, they supported each other in such a way, and Jonathan saw the greatness of who David was, and even though he was typically going to be the one that would then move into gaining the kingdom after his father would designate him, he saw in David a greatness. He saw in him a goodness. He saw in him the power of the divine that was so profound that his own ego fell away, and he simply honored him for who he was, and he adored him, and he loved him. And in the same way, David found such a pure, such an open, such an unreserved love in Jonathan, that the connection he had with the divine that he saw pour through this young man enriched and inspired him profoundly. And everything that David started to do was even better. It was even richer. It was even more powerful because he was filled with such love that was mutual, that there was no thing that could harm him. There was no thing that could keep him from being a direct channel of the Spirit of God. There's a wonderful passage, and in this beautiful passage, Jonathan makes a covenant with David. And he gives him his robe, his fine outer garment. He gives him his armor, and he gives him his sword. And on a human level, what we see here is Jonathan is giving him out of love all that is needed in great honor so that he will be the greatest warrior that he can possibly be. And it is out of this love that they feel for one another, this promise to love and support each other and to see that divine within each other, that their story is indeed a true inspiration for all of us. So take a listen to this first scripture reading.
As soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. As Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house, then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants.
And so we see in this wonderful passage that at first King Saul is delighted. He's thrilled to have David serve for him because he is very victorious as a warrior. And all the service and all those that may have judgment or curiosity or anything about the relationship between Jonathan and David are able to let that go in the very face of love. And so things are mighty great in the house of Saul. Things are powerful, things are blooming. But then there comes a time. There comes a time, as we know, when we open our hearts, and at first we're really full and open, but then you know that shadow part of ourselves, that unresolved part of ourselves, the personality happens and the honeymoon is over, right? Have you ever been there, right? And all of a sudden, your perfect person is not so perfect. Geez, do we know that story, right? And that's what happens to Saul. At first, David can do no wrong. He is awesome. He's incredible. And no, he's not so great. No, he's not so great. The thing that really gets Saul about David is that everybody loves him. Very annoying to Saul. Saul is the king. Everybody loves David. And when they go out to battle, the people start singing a chant, and the chant goes something like this. Oh boy, do I dare. Okay. King Saul has killed thousands, thousands, thousands. King Saul has killed thousands, but David has killed more. Ooh. I'm going to join the choir. I'm making that threat right now. So this is the turning point for King Saul. It's like, whoa. And that unhealed part of him, that personality part of him, starts to feel this jealousy. It starts to resent David. It starts to be angry at the attention and the care that David gets from all the people. And so it stirs up all this unhealed stuff in Saul that says, what about me? What about me? What about me? And he has this false belief that loving David somehow takes away from the people's ability to love him. And so he goes forward in this way, and he becomes obsessed with getting rid of David. He tries to kill David when he is alone with David and David is playing the harp, and he throws things at him. But David is able to avert those efforts. And then he says, okay, well, since that's not going to work, how about if I send him a wife? That should work. So he, first of all, tries to send him one of his daughters. Well, that doesn't work out so well, so then he sends another one of his daughters. Well, David actually does marry the other daughter, but both daughters adore him, so that's not feeling great to Saul. And everything that Saul does to try to destroy David falls short. It feels like the grace of God is protective of David, and it causes him to go forward in ways that only anger Saul even more and even more and even more. And so Saul and Jonathan have a conversation, and Jonathan tries to talk good sense into Saul, saying, you know, David is only here for good. He's only doing his best, and it behooves all of us to appreciate him. Stop trying to destroy him. And so King Saul, recognizing the bond between them, says, you're right, I'm kind of done with that. But Jonathan is wise. And he catches wind of a final plot that Saul has to do away with David. And so he talks to David. And he devises a special code, a little pattern of behavior that will send David a cue as so that he will know whether he is safe or not from the throes and the plans of his father. And so now it is the time of the monthly moon festival, and everybody is out, and there are great preparations. And Jonathan goes out into the field, and he tells David to hide. And he says, if I shoot an arrow one way and instruct my servant boy to get it here, you'll know that that means you're safe. But if I shoot it another way and I instruct my servant boy to do something else and to go farther or do it in a different way, then you'll know you're not safe and it's time to run. Now you'll notice that here Jonathan is betraying his father. But he feels from his soul that he must. For his love of David is great. And he honors the power of divine love over obedience to human authority. And so the day comes when the great revelation of David's safety and ultimately his life is then revealed.
In the morning, Jonathan went out to the field for his meeting with David. He had a small boy with him, and he said to the boy, "Run and find the arrows I shoot." And as the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called out after him, "Isn't the arrow beyond you?" And then he shouted, "Hurry, go quickly, don't stop." And the boy picked up the arrow and returned to the master. The boy knew nothing about all this. Only Jonathan and David knew. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and said, "Go, carry them back to town." After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever." Then David left, and Jonathan went back to the town.
Thank you. We can see what has happened here, can't we? We can see that Jonathan has saved David's life. And if we look at how we can interpret this from a unity perspective, what happens is we start to look at this story symbolically, and we take some of the main characters and some of the main things that happen, and we start to apply it to our own lives. And so what we see here is David, who represents divine love that is individualized within a person and within an individual, within a human being. And that divine love is manifest through David. And then we see Jonathan. And Jonathan represents the soul's love, the human's love, the humanity part of us that loves the divine. That part of us that reaches for and honors and adores the divine. And then we see Saul. And we recognize that he represents human will. The need to control, the need to win, the need to fight, and the part of our ego that is still unhealed and still struggling, but strives to have power. And here's the thing. We see ourselves in each of these characters. We all have David. We all have Jonathan, and we all have Saul within us. And as we hear this story, we decide for ourselves, what is the real story for us? Because actually within this story, there are two stories. The first story is the conflict that is apparent between Saul and David, which is the human will and the divine. And sometimes that human will wants to have control. It wants to be right. It wants to do whatever it can to have its way. And what we see in the story is that divine love will prevail. And so that might be a story for us. Or we see the second story. And that is the story of the bonding between David and Jonathan, which is the power of human love that honors, that beholds the divine, and does whatever is needed to honor the divine. And we see how the divine is strengthened by the power of soul love. And with it, it can do all things even more beautifully. And we see how that love exists between all people. And how that love is magnificent, transcendent, healing, and all-powerful. And so we choose which story is relevant for each of us. And we open ourselves to the possibility of knowing where we are called to change. We ask ourselves, do we want to bring forward more of David, more of Jonathan, less of Saul within our being? Do we want to put aside our will and open up to the way of divine love and its fullness? And do we open to the power of love, human and divine, within ourselves and within all beings? Is that what we're called to grow? And so we ask ourselves these questions. And as we do, I want to complete the story of David and Jonathan, which doesn't happen until later. It happens in 2 Samuel. And it is here that David discovers that Jonathan and Saul have died in battle. And he is heartbroken. He tears at his clothes. He is in great distress, tremendous grief. And he writes, I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan, for greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was more wonderful than the love of women. And it is here in these words that we recognize that the love that they shared was powerful and true, that it was sacred, and it was holy. And it is this kind of love that David will carry in his heart for now and always. Today we're talking about David and Jonathan, and we're talking about love. I invite you to spend some time to see how love will show up more fully within you. Is there a call to love more openly, more deeply, more profoundly, and more bravely? Will you allow love to have its way in you, to do remarkable and amazing things that you would otherwise not do? And will you allow love, true love, pure love, to be the truth of who and what you are? For that is indeed the story of David and Jonathan. It is a story of a great love that can live now and always in our hearts as true, deep, powerful inspiration. Thank you for listening to this story today. Thank you, and God bless. Amen.